Okay, let's talk some books. So I'm gonna quickly in this video just go over what I read in February and give you a little stats update, I guess. And then we're gonna jump into what I'm currently reading. So I'm gonna go through February pretty quick because most of these books I've already given you my thoughts on. But first, I'm gonna start by talking about a book I did not read in February. So if you saw my February TBR, you will know that on that TBR was Hanta. I did not get to this book in February. I just ran out of time. I did attempt to read this book twice. And the first time I just wasn't in the mood for it, but I had time to come back to it later in the month, and I did. And yeah, I looked up a little bit more about the content of this book and what it was about. You're supposed to be following a Dakota Native American tribe as they journey around the US and migrate. And apparently this book was just extremely controversial when it came out. There were some people who thought the author's representation of the tribe was spot on, or at least good. And there were other people who just found it offensive because she did very little research on it and just kind of made up what she thought they would be doing. And there were quite a few people who were very offended by that. And I find those books not books to necessarily avoid or not read right off the bat, but something for me to research and think about. And I'm already doing that with another book, so I wasn't going to do it with two in the same month. This month in general was probably the second or third time I've thought about reading this book, and I just seem to always put it off. So at this point, I'm just going to unhaul this book. I'm leaving it on my digital TBR list so that should I ever want to read it in the future, I can, but for now, bye-bye. All right, that moves on to my star rated books. And my first book was a 1-star read. And that book is The Confessions of Nat Turner by William Styron. I have talked about this book a lot during the month of February, so you can watch those currently readings if you want to hear some abbreviated thoughts. But I will also, this Wednesday, I promise, be coming out with a long form review of my this book. It did turn into a project for me. This was the book that I was talking about. I heavily annotated this book. I even read the intro and the afterword to it, and I will be talking about all of that and why exactly I gave this book a 1-star read and what that means to me. So if you're interested in that, be sure to like and subscribe and ring the bell and do whatever so that you'll know when I talk about it. Moving on to 3-star reads. My first 3-star read to mention is Dune by Frank Herbert. I did finish this book in the month of February, on the very, very last day of February. Good thing it was a leap year. And it was good. It was good for me. I liked it. I didn't love it. I didn't think it was really good. I just thought it was okay. I'm glad I read it because I did go and see the movie, and I really am enjoying the movies. Even though, I could kind of, play along and catch like what was different from the books and stuff, but I'm not like a newfound like Dune fanatic. I have no desire to read the second book. One was good enough for me. And probably the biggest issue that I had with the book was I just felt like it was a little too much. It was a little too much plotting with scheming and everything. The appendix was like too much. Like it's one thing to have a glossary, but when you have to have multiple appendix to explain what happened in the book or the backstory of people in the book, at that point, I'm like, maybe you just put too much in this book and needed to make it multiple books or something. I don't know. It just didn't work for me. So I thought it was okay, but I can definitely see why other people, like people who really like sci-fi, especially political sci-fi, would like this book. I loved the setting and the way and the worlds that were in here. I thought that was excellently done, and there were some interesting characters, and there were a lot of interesting subplots. There were just too many subplots, in my opinion, and not always enough explanation of them. And I know you could keep reading the series and go on from there, but I'm not a series girl, so 3 stars for me. Another 3-star read for me was Armadale by Wilkie Collins. I've got to admit, this one disappointed me, and you can watch my review and learn why. But the long and the short of it was basically, I expected more. For this to be one of Wilkie Collins' 4 most beloved books, like, I gotta admit, I don't totally get why. I thought it was just okay. So, thus a 3-star. In that same category of just okay, was Villette by Charlotte Bronte. Yet again, another author whose works I'm trying to make my way through, and another disappointment. I think for Villette, I just wasn't feeling it. There were things in here that just came across as not plausible and a bit forced, and basically Jane Eyre is better. All right, I had 2 4-star reads this month. The first one is Black Hawk Down. This was a surprise for me. I really enjoyed this book. Well, no, I didn't enjoy it. It was very intense and hard to read, but it surprised me in how well written it was. If you want to know more about this time period or modern war, I would highly recommend reading this book. My other four-star read was The Underground Railroad by Coleson Whitehead. I really enjoyed reading this book. It was surprising the different things that he did in it, and I'd be happy to pass this along to just about anyone. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to send it to my grandmother because I could definitely see her enjoying this read. It was nice and quick. It was a Pulitzer Prize winner, so I am shocked that it got such a high rating from me, but just goes to show you can't judge a book by its sticker award. And finally, my only five-star read this month was Three Men in a Boat by Jerome K. Jerome. I absolutely love this story just as much as I was hoping I was going to. Let me give you a non-blurry shot of the cover. There you go. It was hilarious. It was just character-based and just fun and silly. If you want to see sketches of just how funny we are as humans, this is the book to do it with. And this book will actually be going right back on my shelf because there are two books in here, and the second one is Three Men on the Brummel, and I definitely want to read that. So, all in all, for the month of February, I read 7 books that came out to about 3,021 pages. If I remember correctly, I'll put the numbers up here on the screen. And I'm pretty happy with that. My goal is to read about 3,000 pages every month, and I just sneaked it in. I think it was actually a little bit higher than that because I did read a little supplement and I also started a family book club. But in terms of books that I finished in pages read, that would be the exact number of pages that is in these books. Okay, sorry if there was like an angle change or if I got closer or something. I had to adjust things so that I could get my books. So for the month of March, I am participating in March of the Mammoths. And so my first mammoth that I picked up is The Garden of Seven Twilights. This was actually the book that a lot of people were most excited to hear more about, and I was most excited to pick up. Well, I don't know if it was the book that I was most excited to pick up, but I was really interested in reading more about this as well. And this book is so fascinating, guys. It is more than I thought it was going to be in a lot of ways. There are just lots of neat little things about this book, including a tree of tales, which this book is a whole bunch of embedded narratives. That's part of the structure of the book, where you have a story within a story within a story within a story. As somebody said, it's like bookception, basically. And so the entire experience of reading this book is like opening a book and then opening a book inside the book. Yeah. And it starts from the very beginning. You have that tree of tales, which is like a family tree showing you how all the stories within this story are related. But that's not it. There is also a sort of note to the inexperienced reader, I believe it's called, that is actually the start of the story. And it starts by explaining that, this book is technically just a manuscript that was found in the year 3000. And they explain to you the entire backstory and origin of where they think this manuscript came from, and the backstory of how things got to where they were in the year 2025, which is when the story is supposedly written, or the manuscript was supposedly written. And then in addition to that manuscript, they also have a couple of pages where there's a bibliography where they talk about every previous version of this manuscript that's ever been written. Oh, and there's also an editor's note that helps you figure out how to tell which story you're inside of. So it sounds really complicated, but it's a surprisingly easy read. I was not expecting that, and I was very happy to find that to be the case. I find the writing style very enjoyable, and I was really looking forward to this. The entire premise and setup where they have been removed to this mansion in the countryside while Barcelona is basically being imploded by nuclear bombs, along with some of the other major cities in the world, is like dystopian and feeling right up my alley. What I was not expecting was this book to not really be dystopian and to be about politics and finance and philosophy behind why people go to war. So it's kind of like Dune, but in a garden. With a little less scheming. But there's still stories within stories. All that to say, guys, I ended up DNFing this book. I got so bored. I loved the setup of this book. I liked the actual main story that's inside the story of them just being in this mansion, because they're spending time doing one of three things. They're either telling each other stories, going for walks, or eating dinner together. And when they're telling each other stories, I'm really enjoying the book. There's like some interesting, like maybe jewel heist going on in the story they're telling one another, which seems related maybe to the bombing, and they all seem related to what's going on in the story, and maybe related to everything else that's going on in the world, but that's hard to tell because I haven't gotten that far. Well, I did get far. I got a couple hundred pages in. So that part is really fascinating. When they go for a walk, the place that they're at is really weird, so that's interesting. But then when they're walking, they're just talking about politics and war, and I don't find that interesting. And when they're sitting at dinner, they're just reflecting on how what they learned in the story may be related to politics and war and economics and other things that personally I'm just finding really boring in this book. There are a lot of ideas covered in this book. You can see I was tabbing it, but I just couldn't do it. It was literally putting me to sleep. So I would say if you want to give this book a try, one, let me know. Maybe I'll just send it to you because it's being unhauled. It's leaving my life. Um, but if you want to give this book a try, you should definitely be somebody who likes to think about the politics of war, and what makes war. Every now and then they would hit on a conversation about narratives and storytelling that I loved. I wish that was what they talked about all the time, but it's not. So if you're thinking about reading this book, do way more homework on what the story in here is actually about so you won't be disappointed like I am, because it's a chunker and he's a really good writer. So I will definitely read something else by this author, but I will also definitely spend a lot more time to see what it's about because, yeah, no go for me. So, one of the things I did learn from DNFing that book was that I do like stories within a story. I do like embedded narratives. And so I thought to myself, well, let me test that out. If I really like an embedded narrative, do I have another book that's maybe a mammoth that would involve embedded narratives? And the answer was yes. Yes, I do. And that book is Arabian Nights. So I picked it up because I thought to myself, well, this has embedded narratives. It's definitely a mammoth. And the stories in here should be stories that I enjoy and talk about themes that maybe I'll like. So let me give it a try. Because, there was a part of me that thought maybe it's the embedded narratives that I'm not liking. Nope, it's not. I'm reading this. I started out just aiming to finish it this month by reading 10 nights each day. That didn't work. I felt like I was going through the stories too fast. And so now I'm just reading this every morning while I drink my coffee. And it's great. There are so many interesting, weird stories, and the level of bookception in Arabian Nights is like making this look tame. Okay. I'm in one story and we're like four stories like deep at this point. I'm having to keep track, which thanks to this book, I now know how to do. But some of the stories that I have enjoyed in here are King Sinbad and his hawk. That was probably the most touching story that I've read in here so far. There was also the story of the magnetic mountain, which was literally a mountain that was magnetic and so would pull all the iron off your ship, including the nails, so your ship would fall apart and you'd potentially drown if you got too close to it. Like, why hasn't somebody written that into like a fantasy novel? Like, please do. Oh, and I love the culture. I love the Persian and Middle Eastern and Arab culture that is just mixed into this book. Um, the food, the scents, just what they think of as beautiful, because every woman in here is beautiful, and every man is the hottest man alive, as described by Shahrazad. Um, but I just love that it's different things that are focused on as beauty. Like, you have the normal things, like women are beautiful in the normal way that most women are beautiful, and so are men. But then there's also like a lovely description of how beautiful this one woman is with her unibrow. Like, where else are you going to read that? And this one man who's apparently like the most delightful thing the women have ever set their eyes on. They go on and on about his musky smell. Yeah. And apparently, I like hearing about that. I like to hear what other people think in other places is beautiful. So I am enjoying Arabian Nights. This will take me way longer than the month to finish. So we'll see how that goes. But so long as I'm enjoying it while I drink my coffee, that's all I care about. I started Forever Amber, and this is a novel that takes place during the Restoration, and it's basically a historical romance. I mean, there's nothing particularly romantic happening yet, but in theory, that sounds classified, so we'll go with it for now. What is it about? Basically, Amber is a young lady who is like pretty hot and heavy for pretty much every guy, especially if they think she's attractive. And she gets wrapped up with this lord who comes through her little country town, and next thing she knows, they're hanging out in London, having a good time at the inn. So now she's still in London and having to figure out life for herself and how to make her way there. And the story goes on. What's going on in the rest of England is that, after going through a time of Puritans and no kings, the rest of England's basically decided, yeah, that didn't work out. That kind of sucked. So they got rid of the Puritans. Thanks. We all know where they went. and they brought King Charles II, the son of the king that they beheaded, back to the country and said, yeah, let's try this again. And so now the king is back on the throne and the Puritans are gone and everybody's having a party like the French. And so it's a bawdy good time. I think the only issue I have with the book so far, which is by and large just a light, fun read, is Amber. I like she's frustrating me, guys. She's frustrating me beyond belief because she's not a bad character, but she's coming across as an idiot. I think she's supposed to be viewed as like naive, like, oh, like I'm a country girl. I don't know how all this works or whatever. But the tropes and events that the author is using to show how naive she is and to get her in these difficult situations are, one, kind of on the typical side, and two, like she buys it every single time in the most unbelievable way that she's not coming across as naive. She's coming across as stupid. So yeah, so I'm a little frustrated with Amber, but beyond that, everything is going well in this book and it's fun and I'm enjoying it. So we'll see. We'll see if Amber improves because as a friend, Elliot, ESP Library, mentioned to me a good way to tell if it's time to DNF a book is if you're having a problem with the book, identify what the problem is, and then ask yourself, is it going to get better? I realized with The Garden of Seven Twilights, no, it wasn't going to get better. That was just a theme in the book, and it wasn't going to go away. They were going to continue to talk about it. With Forever Amber, is she likely to become less stupid? Probably not, but I don't hate it that bad. It's kind of funny that she's just gonna be this naive. And in fact, I guess there is a part of me that actually thinks she won't continue to be that naive. So I'm gonna keep reading in hopes that Amber one day wakes up and gets a clue. Because this isn't Clueless, so it's gotta happen at some point, right? Last but not least, The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde is my read-along that I am co-hosting, and so I have started this. I'm planning on reading basically a quarter of the book each week, so I'll be done by the end of the month, and I'm just reading it during my reading sprints or my co-host reading sprints, so each time I'm trying to just read a couple of chapters, and that'll get me a quarter way through the book by the end of the month, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, if you'd like to read this, I'll be sure to leave in the description box information on how to join our Storygraph read-along, where you can put all your comments and share all your thoughts, and I'm sharing all my thoughts and favorite quotes and this and that as I go along. I am really enjoying this book, but it is nothing like what I thought it was going to be about. I thought we were just going to be following Dorian around while he did like horrible things and his picture was going to be hanging over there doing whatever and da-da-da. No. I feel like thus far I'm a couple chapters in and I'm like, Dorian, where are you? Are you in part of this book? Like, and who are all these other people? That's my experience so far. But the other people are actually really interesting too. And in fact, Dorian's the person I like the least in this book so far, and not for the reasons that I thought I would. But I don't want to spoil anything, so I won't say any more than that. But yeah, wow, join, read. Yeah, that's what I've got going on. So I'm surrounded by books, and I think I've talked about them all. Yeah, so that's it. Let me know if you've read any of these books, if you've liked them more or less than I have, and yeah, comment below with your thoughts on them. If you're gonna leave any spoilery comments, that's fine. I'm cool with talking spoilers in the comments. Just make sure that you label your comment like spoiler so you don't spoil it for someone else. That's it for today. I'll see you next time. Bye.